So I often think about what makes our writing really, really strong. And one of the things that we need to consider when we're writing, whether or not it's for a literary analysis or analysis of how a writer uses language, like we will in AP, we need to understand how to make our analysis idea based instead of just fact based. And ideas really drive writing. Ideas get below the surface. So the number one way to do this is through universal ideas. So if there's one trick to better writing, it's understanding what a universal idea is, how to use one, how to recognize one, and why. So let's start. We know that everything we read has meaning, and everything we read has a deeper meaning. So we have to fundamentally agree that text, whether or not we mean text as a written piece, text as music, text as art, text as video, there's always a deeper meaning. So there's the literal, and then there's the deeper meaning. And universal ideas are what gets you into that deeper meaning. So we have two images here. One to the left is the figurative meaning with it's raining cats and dogs. We don't mean that. This is an idiomatic phrase. It is an idiom. What we literally see is rain, and a lot of it. So much so that it's raining cats and dogs, that this woman is literally floating away on the park bench. Universal ideas are those big ideas that come up in everything that we read. And just like we go back to the figurative versus the literal meaning of a word, we understand that there is the surface level of a text and then that deeper level, whether it's metaphorical, figurative, whether or not you are building connections that you interpret from the text and that someone sitting next to you may not see those same things. So we know that just like a dollar bill, when we take it at face value, we see 100 pennies on the dollar. And we know that we could go spend that for whatever we can buy for a dollar bill. But that changes in terms of its meaning based on what country you live in, what you prefer to purchase, what value system you have around money, and what your end goal is. So all those factors contribute to changing that deeper value, that deeper meaning of a dollar bill. So there's the face value of a dollar, and then there's that the deeper meaning beneath that face value. So universal ideas, if I were to come up with just one synonym as a phrase, it would be big ideas. And those big ideas that come up in every single thing that we read. Again, there's nothing that we read, there's no text, there's no speech that does not have a meaning beneath its surface. So we're always reading for at least two levels of meaning. And that's super important to understand as we move forward in any class and as we prepare for college, but certainly in AP Lang. The other thing to understand about a universal idea that is a little bit different is that it is an abstract concept. Further speaking, it's an abstract noun. So it is something that is a thing, right? But like any of these things on the image on this hand, we know that we cannot truly see balance. Like we can see a person who is balanced and we know what those characteristics are, but we can't really see it. We can't hold it. We can't touch it, feel it, buy it, sell it. So that's kind of the list that I run down in my head. So determination. Can I hand you determination, like physically in my hand? Or here, you pick which hand determination is in and I'll give it to you. No. So determination is in fact a thing. It is a noun, but it's abstract. it doesn't fully exist in space and time. It doesn't fully exist the same for any two people. So what means determination for me, I carry my entire experience, my formative childhood, my adulthood, and that defines what determination is for me. Whereas you or someone else, a friend of yours, you have very different definitions of determination constructed by your own experiences. So, abstract noun, it exists, it is a thing, but it's not the same for everybody. And we can't pass it along. We can't hold it in our hand, touch it, buy it, hold it, sell it, feel it, all that stuff. And that is my test when I'm thinking about what a universal idea is and is not. So again, all these names, all these nouns on this person's hand, we kind of like know what they are, but we can't put our finger on it. We can describe it. We can share a story of personal definition, but we can't assume that it's the same thing for every single person. And that's what makes it universal. And that's what helps us to dig beneath the surface when we use these words to describe something, to describe a text, to describe an author's style. So again, if we picture this iceberg, you're always dealing with at least two levels of meaning in any single text. We have what's on top, what is obvious and visible, it's literal. It's also called, when we're writing analysis in an essay, when it's a literary analysis of a book, a text that is fiction, your teacher might come back to you and say, no, this is plot summary. Erase the plot summary and put in your own ideas. So plot summary is sort of like, this is what happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. But anybody can say that because we all experienced the same factual plot. So just like if we're thinking about analyzing a writer's style or a writer's language, because remember, we're reading like a writer, we're not reading for fiction. So if I'm analyzing an essay, we can all agree that an essay has so many paragraphs. We're counting the paragraphs. It's evident and visible, and it's a factual thing. But the moment that we get into beneath the surface, what are some big ideas about why a writer chose to write with 5 paragraphs versus 2 versus 10? That's when we get into idea-driven analysis, where I could argue one thing and you could argue another, and we're both correct if it's logical and based in evidence. So again, there's the surface level, and then there's beneath the surface. As writers, whether or not we're writing for literature or writing a business or economics paper when we go to college, or we're writing a speech when we become speechwriters or become our own speechwriters, we want to dig beneath the surface so that no one can say to us, yeah, so what? Who cares? So how to avoid that phrase? And we never want someone to say like, yeah, okay, so what? So again, we want to, and this is why this picture, I love this picture because it's like 2 hearts and you're jabbing your eyes out. We always want to stay from the surface. We can read plot summary as surface, and you want to get to the bigger deal where we both have our own ideas and they're both correct. They're both interesting, but we need to back that up with the universal ideas that we find in the text. So like anybody can tell you what happened. If you read something, if you're reading fiction, anyone can say, this happened first, this is where it took place, this is the year it took place. If you're reading, let's say, Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, so Dr. King wrote it, here's the year, here's the place, this is why. But until we dig into some ideas around hope, fear, compassion, struggle. Like once we bring those ideas to the table, then our analysis of Dr. King's speech becomes worthy of reading because we're bringing these thoughts to the table that we're making a statement, we're staking a claim, and we're saying Dr. King's speech is about hope. Whereas you could say Dr. King's speech is about struggle, and someone else could say his speech is about fear. That's where universal idea gets really interesting in our analysis. So if we're thinking about a literary analysis, we have in the blue, this play Fences is about a family of 5 people living in Pittsburgh. Troy's the head of the family, and he's married to a woman named Rose. We could have looked that up and Googled it when we searched for Fences, the play. It's factual. We can't argue that. Although, if we bump it up a level and we bring in some universal ideas to build our analysis, we have the play Fences is about a family broken apart by sadness and loss at the hands of Troy, the father who takes that position in his family without ownership of what that means. So at least, and I actually counted one more with position, but at least here we have sadness, loss, ownership. They are all abstract. I can't hold sadness in my hand. I can't sell sadness. They are all things. They're all nouns. So those are all some big ideas to make sure that we have analysis in our thinking. I like to think of this image of a tree and that the text is the trunk of a tree. And the roots really dig into the ground and they hold that trunk of the tree up so that we have the universal ideas feeding the tree, strengthening the tree, preventing the tree from toppling over. And that feeds it up to the branches and the leaves. And that to me is the analysis, because the analysis is the growth. It's the life of a tree. Some people ask, okay, where does theme fit in? Because we're taught as students to read for theme. And that's absolutely true. And we should be reading for theme. The difference is that the universal ideas strengthen the theme. They grow the theme. They give theme sort of like the specificity, the specific part of the theme. If I say that a universal idea that I see in Romeo and Juliet is love. So the theme that grows out of love is maybe love is blind or love conquers all. So the theme is sort of like a stretched out version of that very specific universal idea. Again, universal ideas feed the theme, they feed the analysis. And that's why I like this image to really ground what we're talking about if you're a visual thinker. All of these words are universal ideas because they are abstract, they are nouns, they are big ideas that we can pull out of any speech, any writer's writing to make it our own analysis of that writing. So what is this image about? Well, I'm looking at it and I could say it's about a piano. There is a man playing the piano. There appears to be maybe a father and a son lying underneath that piano, looking up. And that is true. That is what it's about. However, that's surface. So we always want to dig deeper with universal ideas. Let's dig into that. This is about escape. Yeah, but now I need to say how it's about escape. So this is about beauty. Absolutely. Beauty, another universal idea. Now as a writer, I'm going to say how it's about beauty, getting into my analysis from that universal idea of beauty. It's about fatherhood, another noun, another abstract noun. I can't hand you fatherhood in my hands, but I'm going to build a picture or an analysis for you about why I think this image is about fatherhood. And what about this image makes it so? This is about compassion, again. So these are all those universal ideas that make this about an analytical piece of thinking. Remember, nouns only. Nouns are things. Things are ideas. So let's just review this, because a lot of times when we're kicking around like what a universal idea is, we come up with a verb, an action word, we come up with an adverb that ends in ly, we might come up with an adjective. Remember, adjective describes. So if it's used to describe something, it's not a universal idea, it is an adjective, so change it to a noun. So look at this list here. We have magical. Magical, well, what's magical? I had a magical evening. So magical describes evening. It is an adjective. It's not a noun. Change it into a noun. Magic. I have magic. Okay, same thing. A lot of the alls, the beautiful, FUL, AL, AL, those are all adjectives. The beautiful girl. The girl has beauty. See the difference? Beautiful girl, that's a description of the girl. If the girl has something, I have this phone. I have beauty. There's very different. Doubtful, again, that's an FUL word. The doubtful student who watched this mini lesson versus the student who has doubt, right? I have this phone, but doubt is a universal idea because I can't hold it in my hand, but I still have it. And then polite is another example. The polite student is an adjective of that to describe the student, but the student who has politeness. So that NESS, that is a trick to sort of add on to a word. If you really like a word and you're feeling that is their universal idea, try adding the ness to it. Chances are it will make it a noun. And that's why I have that note, replace FUL or AL, either just with like magical to magic or polite to politeness. So how do you make sure you have that universal idea? Here's the test. Is it abstract? Again, we know what that is now. Is it a big idea? And big ideas do correlate to theme. So theme is the message. Universal idea, remember, is the root or seed that strengthens and really solidifies or roots the overall theme. Is it one word? Most of the time, universal ideas, if you have one at a time, they're one words. And is it a noun? Is it a thing? And here's the test for a noun. Can I hold it in my hand, right? Or can I stare at it? Can I look at it? If it's a tree, I'm not going to hold it in my hand, but I can stare at that tree. And then that's the noun test. So again, I cannot tell you enough that universal ideas, remember, look at all of these different things that one picture can be about, depending on your perspective and what you know, your own experience. Remember, the ideas that we are having them for the first time, perhaps the first time ever in this universe. And that's what makes you so important as a writer right now in history, right now in time. So when you are coming up with ideas about a text and a writer and the language that is used, and you're asking why are these ideas used? You are building universal ideas and you're building analysis and thinking that has not been built before. And it's different and distinct and unique than the person sitting next to you, because we all come at something with that different perspective. I hope you enjoyed learning about universal ideas.